Hello and welcome to episode 3 in season 2 of the Don't Give a Ruck podcast. As always, I'm your host Nathan Parker, and today's special guest, as you can see, is the former Crusaders, Leicester Tigers and of course All Black centre Aaron Mauger. We delved into his playing days as well as Aaron opening up on the defeat to France in 2007, his sacking from Welford Road and what it's really like to play alongside Daniel Carter. Firstly though, as per every show, we began by discussing Aaron's well-being during the pandemic. Enjoy. Well, firstly, it's an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Aaron. And obviously, it's been a crazy few months for everyone around the world. How have you been?
Not too bad, thanks. Yeah, it's obviously had its challenges over the last year, but can only focus on what's in front of you. So I think, on the whole, people have done a great job. Been fortunate here in New Zealand that it's been controlled pretty well, and life is normal enough at the moment. Still has its challenges and still had a lot of effects on people, the current situation, but we're doing okay. Got a lot of friends around the world who are probably in tougher circumstances at the moment, so always thinking of them and connect with a lot of people around the world. A lot of good buddies over in Ireland, actually. Been back down in lockdown since Christmas, so thinking of all you guys, and hope you're all keeping safe and well.
And whilst the rest of the world was in lockdown, I think it was about May or June time, the Super Rugby Aotearoa started back up, and it was almost like a release for us over in the UK to sort of wake up and actually watch some rugby with some crowds as well. What was it like to be a part of?
Oh, it was fantastic, and I think it wasn't just for the people involved, the playing roster and the staff and management and the clubs. You could see the impact that it had on that global aspect, as you're talking about, but also, especially around the fans and the community. It's what a lot of our people live for in New Zealand. There's a lot of rugby mad people over your way as well, and to give them some live footy, a bit of a release and get away from the conditions they're currently living in was a good thing. And one thing we were proud of, we were able to play some really good rugby. It was a tight competition. There was a lot of interest. There are essentially all back trials every match with the quality of footy going on. So it was great to be a part of. And for our players, you could just see the change in their demeanour, their mood, and once they got back out on the footy field and were able to do what they love doing.
And it seemed, well, from the outsider looking in, that almost every team was like at the very top level. Do you think it was down to maybe the players having a little bit of a break due to the lockdown restrictions? And obviously players don't really get much of a break in today's game in rugby, do they? So do you think it was because of that and because of the break that they had?
Oh, 100%. I think we learned a lot from the break. I think it was a chance for players to really reflect on where they're at, not just around their careers, but also where they're at in life. I saw a lot of maturity in our players through that period, having to deal with adversity, having to manage themselves, having to get out and do their own training, manage their schedules. There's a lot of growth in a lot of our players. So there are a lot of positives that come out of it, and sometimes through circumstance you're forced to dig a little bit deeper and find out who you really are and what you want to achieve in life. And when those things are taken away from you, it's a good opportunity to really assess on what's most important and be grateful for what you do have. And we were certainly grateful when the opportunity came back to play some footy and for everyone to be a part of it.
Unfortunately for yourself, at the end of the tournament, you departed the Highlanders. Were you sad to go?
Yeah, it was in many aspects. Really enjoyed my time at the Highlanders. A fantastic bunch of people. It's a different club. And what I mean by different is we don't have all the resources that a lot of the other clubs have. So our mantra down here is to do more with less, and you've got to be really proud of the people that dig in and make good stuff happen with what we've got. So that's a real part of the Highlanders' identity. So yeah, it was sad to go. Looking forward to new ventures going forward. It's been a pretty full-on sort of 5 years, the last 5 years for me personally. So it was actually quite nice to take a bit of time over the summer holidays and reset and look at the future for me. Spend more time with my family. It's probably the longest summer break I've had with the family since I myself was at school, I went straight into professional footy as an 18-year-old out of school. Went to teachers college for a year. Didn't quite survive that year with the footy workload as well, and then pretty much into it. So every summer since then, I've been busy either training as a player or preparing as a coach for the last 10 years. So it's actually been quite nice to really invest some quality time with the family, and for me myself to take a bit more time to reflect and look at what it is I really want to do going forward.
Well, let's take you back to your playing days now. I'm sure we'll talk more about the coaching later on in the show. But 46 All Black caps, you had plenty of success with the Canterbury and the Crusaders in the Super Rugby. Do you feel you achieved everything from the game?
Like I said before, very, very fortunate to have had those opportunities. I worked hard as a player. Wasn't the biggest midfielder going around, so had to find my style, what worked for me. So I felt that I managed to adapt my game reasonably well. And I had some fantastic mentors and coaches that helped me figure that out along the way. My early professional career in Canterbury and the Crusaders was massively influenced by guys like Wayne Smith, Steve Hansen, Robbie Deans, all very different coaches. But they all had a massive influence on me. Robbie Deans was great around culture. So creating an environment, one that he was very passionate about. He was a Canterbury man himself, farmer that had worked the land. He was very good at driving the Canterbury and Crusader way, the Canterbury man, and all the values that are associated with the people of the region, and very good at connecting the wider region and connecting players to what it meant to our people. Did a very good job in that space. Very good technical coach, Robbie, and made the game fun. So he made the game really fun for us as players. So we were training and we were learning implicitly without really having to think too much, just from some of the constraints and modified games that he put in place. So we were learning how to win territory battles. We were learning how to attack space, and he had a good way of going about it. So. And sometimes you don't always appreciate these things until you're coaching yourself. You think back and you reflect on what are some of the the things that your coaches did really well back in the day, and he was certainly very good at that side of the game. And if you look back on the Crusader teams under Robbie Deans' tenure, did the basics really well. They're always really committed teams. But we're probably the best team at finding space and exploiting opportunities, and a lot of that was through how he coached us. So a lot of credit's got to go to him for that success, and also prior to that with Vance Stewart, Ozzie McLean, Wayne Smith when they were in charge, they sort of went through the tough years. The first year of Crusader footy, 96, team come dead last. They managed to come mid-table, and then 98 they won it. It was a couple of years before my first year. And just the transition that took place there, and the depths that those guys went to really lay a foundation for guys like myself coming through in the next few years was huge. Gilbert Anoka was a big part of that process as well, and obviously his name and his record speaks for itself with what he's done with New Zealand rugby over the years. So the old saying, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. Those guys are certainly giants to me and the whole New Zealand rugby community. Really fortunate. One of the big strengths of the Crusaders in Canterbury at the time was everything was shared. So you're not only learning from great coaches, you're learning from great men that you play alongside. And some of those great men for me, first one was my first captain, Todd Blackadder. Just an outstanding human being, fantastic leader. Thought he didn't always say a lot, but when he did, you knew exactly what he meant. He was really clear, and he would never ask you to do something that he wouldn't do himself. And he's often the first guy when you're under pressure that was put his hands up and inspire his teammates through his actions. So, me in terms of a player, an outstanding leader. Actually, my debut game for Canterbury was actually my first start, so my fourth game, and Robbie chucked me the number 10 jersey, and I was 18 years old at the time, so I was obviously a little bit nervous, and I was playing around guys that were superstars, and I've been at the school the year before, idolising these guys, and I'd go along to Lancaster Park and watch these guys play, and they'd all been playing for the All Blacks, and I was a little bit nervous around calling the shots, and I got room with Todd Blackadder. And to make things worse, Angus Gardner was good friends with Todd Blackadder. Angus actually played over in the UK as well. He was a part of that Crusader team in the early years. Fantastic man, Angus. And but he came in and he asked me why I hadn't made Todd a cup of tea yet. So the new boy's job was to make the skipper a cup of tea, especially if you room with them. And so I thought, okay, so I get up and I go to see about making this a cup of tea, and didn't really know how to make a cup of tea properly. I didn't drink tea myself at the time, and I think I might have put the tea bag in, and then I put the milk in, and then I put the water in, and so I got a lesson on making a cup of tea from Angus Gardner. It was a pretty stern lesson, to be fair. Got to make a cup of tea properly. So to make matters worse, I'm more nervous now. I was like, geez, I can't actually do anything right.
Yeah.
But Toddy, in his way, had an ability just to calm people and create that a relationship of equality, very inclusive. Looked after me. So by the time I went out onto the field with what he'd done, the night prior and leading into the game, I felt really confident to go out there and express myself. And I remember him saying, "Look, it doesn't matter what happens. We back you, got you 100%." And I felt great going into that game, and paid off. Managed to play okay. I think we got through and got a win, and managed to play okay. And then he took me out all night. Said, "Look, what a great day we've had. Good win. It's me and you all night." So he took me out till about 3 o'clock in the morning down in Dunedin, and amongst Otago's finest, down the Octagon and through a couple of the bars. And we had a great night together. I'm 18. He's about 26 at the time. And I just thought, what a fantastic guy. I'm going to follow you for life,
Yeah.
And I've played with Toddy for a few more years before he took off to the UK, and then coached with Todd later on at the Crusaders. So just certainly a guy that I've got a lot of time for. And he had a massive influence on the way that Canterbury and Crusader people went about their business, and creating an environment of inclusion and equality. There was still obviously the hierarchy, but it didn't need to be talked about, didn't really need to be reinforced with bullying behaviour or anything like that. It was just everyone knew, respected it, but it was a real team. So we're a great environment, good people. We talked about some other coaches before. Steve Hansen, he was, I thought Steve had really great EQ. So he was a real student of the game. Was actually mentored by Steve's father, Des, when I first come out of school, and very, very similar. I think Steve's acknowledged that through his coaching career, that his dad had a massive influence on him. So I was lucky enough to work with Des for a couple of years, go around, sit in the family house and have a cup of tea with him. So at 17, 18 years old, and learn all the old tricks. It was funny when Steve first started coaching me, because just sounded exactly like his old man. A lot of Steve's one-liners back in the day. But he was a real caring coach. I remember one, it was actually the year 2001. A lot of us made the All Blacks for the first time, and we were playing for Canterbury. And we were expected to win a game up in North Harbour. And it was Steve's first year in charge as a head coach. We'd won 3 on the bounce. We were playing pretty scratchy rugby. Then we got up to North Harbour and they smoked us, and it was I think probably one of the key moments in that game. They beat us up, and they literally beat us up. Matua Parkinson and Justin Marshall had an almighty scrap. I remember that game. I think they come out of that, they got their tails up, and that was it for them. They grew their belief, and we got absolutely smoked. So we're all a bit down. We'd expected to win that game. We thought we had a good thing going, and all Steve said to us was, "Look, I loved you guys before the game, and I loved you after the game, and we're a team." And just the way that he dealt with that, everyone was expecting a bit of a barreling, and the way that he dealt with that and understood what the team needed was outstanding. We went on to win. I think we come down to Dunedin the next week and won by 60 points. Richie McCaw's first start in a Canterbury jersey. I think he scored 3 tries at Carrisbrook. And that sparked something really special. I think we went on a 6 or 7 game winning streak there, and a lot of us made the All Blacks for the first time, toured Ireland, Scotland, and Argentina at the end of that year. So there's an example of Steve's ability to read what was needed, and obviously the rest of his career speaks for itself. Coached Canterbury for another year or so, and then come over to Wales, back to New Zealand with Graham Henry and his crew, and he served Steve.
Yeah.
So pretty special guy, big influence. And Wayne Smith, the other guy I talked about before, probably the most detailed coach I've ever come across. He's still doing some wonderful things around the world. So I'm mindful that I've been speaking for the last 5 minutes, and you probably want to ask me.
You carry on. I'm enjoying this.
You might actually run out of tape. Sorry, mate, but I suppose to me, you probably can't sum it up in words.
Yeah.
The impact those guys have had on me personally, as a man in my rugby career, and also on the game itself.
Yeah. Well, from my personal point of view, I've had Steve Hansen and Graham Henry on the show, and I've spent half hour with them, and I know what you mean with Steve Hansen. Just short and precise sentences that he's putting together to sum up such a long period of his coaching career. And I will be honest, every question I give Steve, I was a bit intimidated about what answer was going to come back, because I was a little bit scared, because I have heard stuff about him in the past. But after the half hour, it's absolutely brilliant. He was such a laid back guy. Out of that, from what you said there, I just want to know, do you know how to make a cup of tea now?
Certainly do, yeah. I've actually got one of my old coaches coming around for a cup of tea later on. I'm actually going to do it properly and put it in the pot and serve them up in some nice fine china. So yeah, come a long way.
Yeah.
I actually played some rugby with a guy called Simon Mailing.
Yeah.
And he was a Highlander great, real laid back lad, but he was a Christ College boy, so private school up in Christ College. And I remember touring with him, and the boys just having the gumboot cup of tea, in the room. This is a couple of years after my incident with Angus Gardner and Top Lacquer. And Simon Mailing wouldn't actually drink the tea, and he's a pretty laid back dude, but he had been used to drinking his tea out of a teapot. So he would only drink tea properly. So
yeah.
Serving one of his old coaches, Tony Gilbert, today for a cup of tea, or I'll actually do it properly.
What I want to ask is, was there a pressure on you from a young age? Because I believe you're related to the Bishop brothers. I believe they're your uncles, and obviously they stamped their mark in New Zealand rugby very early on in your career. Was there pressure on you from your family to put that All Black jersey on one day?
No pressure at all. We were lucky to have such great role models in our family. So I think I was maybe 7 or 8 when Graham first made the All Blacks. And what that did was inspire actions and behaviours in myself and my brother, who were really keen rugby players. We were born into a rugby family. And to see that they could achieve those things, and they were normal people like us, made that dream a real possibility for us. And then it was about emulating some of the things they were doing. They were training hard. They were always working on their skills. They would grab us. They would take us down with them. So the connection grew, and they were more like big cousins to us. Obviously, the age gap wasn't too big, about 10, 12 years or whatever it is. So they were a huge influence in our early lives, and also our connection and our passion for the game. I used to go along to Lancaster Park and watch my uncles play, and then when they were playing for the All Blacks, it was a pretty amazing feeling. So they had a huge influence on my ability and Nathan's ability to see the opportunities that were available to us if we just worked hard and chipped away at our game. And the family were just so supportive. We come from a small fishing town, or small port, which is Littleton, which is the port that services Christchurch. And it's a working class area, and it's a place that made us. It was a tough place. We had good, tough mates. We had a great little rugby club. It's still surviving in Division 2 senior rugby, and we had just a great support network was a tough, proud little town, and all those people. My first coach was a guy called Minnie Radcliffe. Don't know if he was always sober when he turned up to trainings when I was sort of 6, 7 years old. But he was such a fantastic guy, and he really created a real energy, in that team environment. And just all those experiences along the way that make kids want to go on and achieve things in the game, or make them enjoy it and they want more. So very, very fortunate upbringing. I'll say we didn't have much in terms of the material, or we're a poor family, but we had all the love and support that made it possible to get to where we got to.
Well, the chance for you came in 2001 to finally put that All Black jersey on. I believe it was at Lansdowne Road against Ireland. I'm sure you remember a lot from that day.
Yeah, a dream come true. So I actually played in Ireland in 1997 for a small club called Suttonians on the north side. Once again, really, really proud connection to the Irish people. So I was in 1997. The All Blacks played at Lansdowne Road, and I went and watched the game. Ireland were actually up 20 points, I think, early in the game, and Keith Wood had scored. He was doing his crazy stuff. He was doing reverse flip passes and chip kicks. He actually scored a try off one of his own chip kicks. I think he scored in the corner. So he had scored 2 tries. It was pretty much Keith Wood 20, All Blacks sort of 3 at the time, 1997. This is the time that I was playing over in Ireland myself. I was only 17 at the time the All Blacks played. So the next time the All Blacks played at Lansdowne Road was my first test. Yeah. So I had all these awesome sort of emotions going through my head when I was going to the game, and I caught up with all my good mates from Suttonians Rugby Club through the week, and they said they're all going to be there. And the bus turns up, and I'm reflecting on all the things that had helped me get to this game, so I could just go out and enjoy the game. And I get to the ground, and there's about 20 of my mates from Suttonians lined up in Suttonians jerseys. They get it, pull up outside the old Lansdowne Road, and they all turn around, and they've got Major on the back of these Suttonian jersey with number 12 on it. So it was a pretty special moment for me. In terms of the game, it was I thought it was actually going to be my last test. We're about 30 minutes in, and Ireland were running a muck. They were all over us. I was marking Kevin Maggs, and I remember him. He scored a fantastic try that day. David Humphreys was just drilling the corners. They had a really good game plan. They executed it well, and they were up. You could just see the energy. And I was thinking, far out. Yeah, going to be part of the first All Black team. So I had all these young guys. Wasn't used to playing with a lot of pressure. Yeah, and I thought, geez, this is going to be it. Fortunately, we found our way back into the game later on, and I think we got through. We snuck through in the end, maybe by 10 points. But it was a fantastic occasion. Remember going into one of the big town hall and receiving a cap, and we had a big test dinner, and I remember it like it was yesterday. It was such a good feeling, real vivid memories, even off the game. So it's a pretty special feeling.
Well, for me, growing up watching the All Blacks, you always look. I remember in 2003 it was Spencer, yourself, and Aaron Mauger. That was the 10, 12, 13, and you made your debut alongside Tanner and Mauger, and you sort of made a real connection with Tanner, and I think you were the centre partnership for about 5 or 6 years, and you were unbreakable really. And I don't think anybody thought that could sort of manifest itself and become any better. But obviously, Marnonu and Conrad Smith took up that role then years later. But that's where I grew up with. What was it like playing alongside Tanner and Mauger?
He's a real legend of New Zealand rugby, the first Pacifica captain for the All Blacks as well. So he broke some new ground and achieved some amazing things. I thought Tanner and I complemented each other pretty well out on the field. Obviously, he was pretty hard running, heavy hitting sort of midfielder. Had great feet, good skills. Worked really hard on his game. So there were parts to his game that I really wanted to learn and tap into. And I think there were parts of my game that Tanner would come to me after training. We struck up a really good connection around all the work-ons we did. We did all our work-ons together during those years. At the end of training, we would design our own drills, and we would go through it and pretty good with the detail. So I learned a lot from him during that time. we also were learning to play the guitar at the same time. So a lot of ways on the footy field that those connections are formed. A lot of it's actually away from the footy field. So we had some common interests. And yeah, that relationship seemed to be a good one. We sort of just got each other out on the field. I think didn't always need to communicate verbally. Sometimes the body language, you pick up on each other's body language. We have to read each other, which is a sign of a real partnership. So, fantastic time playing with Tana.
And it's amazing how everything comes full circle. Obviously, only a few months ago, you partnered Tana again in the coaching box this time for Moana Pacifica against the New Zealand Maori. That must have been a very special day as well, because, you know, even in the UK, you know, that was quite big over here, watching that game, seeing how it panned out.
Yeah, well, it was a fantastic opportunity, really, once again, for Pacifica Rugby to showcase its talents. And if you look at the impact that Pacific Rugby has had on the world and on the world stage, not always for their home nations, often opportunities have been potentially better family-wise and education-wise to get offshore. And I think the Vunipola brothers are a good example. Manu Tuolangi playing for England, Toby Falatau playing for Wales, Bundy Aki at the moment playing for Ireland, and all the Pacific players that have come through the All Blacks, and you see a lot of them playing for Australia now. Tani Alatupos, Korobitis, Samu Karevis, Davido Kondranis, and they're just everywhere. And they are such a key influence on the game of footy. It's become a real power game, and those guys have those attributes. So it was a great way to recognise the contribution that Pacific Rugby and Pacific players have had on the game, especially in New Zealand. So we're really hoping that Pacific Rugby get the opportunity to be involved in a major tournament. Hopefully it's Super Rugby in the coming years, and there's a lot of work going on in the background at the moment. But that was certainly a good segue into it, and a great way to promote the potential of a team being involved in the future.
And bringing it back to your playing career now, and when I brought this up with Steve Hansen and Graham Henry, they didn't really want to talk about it, but I think we should talk about it. It's about the World Cup in 03 and 07. Me growing up, I didn't much have a lot of understanding, you know, at the age of 7 or 8 about rugby, but I always knew how good the All Blacks were, and they would win Tri-Nations after Tri-Nations. And then when it'd get to the World Cup, just something would happen, and something, you know, would go astray, just like the Australia game in 03 and the France game in 07. Now, looking back, you know, that was many years ago, 14 years ago now, the 2007 World Cup was. Looking back, can you sort of put your finger on what went wrong during that tournament?
Yeah, it's probably a few things. I think experience was a big one. So you look at 2003, we had I wouldn't say our coaches were inexperienced, because Robbie Deans had achieved a lot as a coach already at that time. Tom Mitchell had had international experience with England prior to that, and then 2 years with an All Black team that he had playing really, really good rugby. But they hadn't been to a World Cup together before as coaches, and a lot of us as players hadn't been to a World Cup. We had players that had experienced 1999, and I don't know if we really took all the lessons from 1999. It was sort of brushed. We're not that team. But we didn't really learn around and probably appreciate what's coming at you in knockout games, and the passion as the French have shown in numerous World Cups. Their nemesis, and really learning and preparing for knockout rugby, because it's a knockout competition. As we found out in 2003, we actually beaten Australia earlier that year. To win the Bledisloe Cup back for the first time in 5 years. So you go into that tournament and you're probably overconfident, because you're pretty much, you know, beating everybody. England come out earlier in that year and beat us, so that should have been a real wake-up call. But it was a young team. was a lot of first-year guys, Joe Rockethoko, Manu, Dan Carter's, all those guys were coming in, and Mills Muliaina, they were playing outstanding footy, being on top of the world. So they've never really been smacked in the nose as an All Black. So that was probably part of our downfall, really. Did we prepare for adversity, or have the tools to cope under real pressure, which is what Australia did to us in that semi-final? I'd say no. We come up short, and we didn't really have the ability to adapt and react, and then be proactive around what we were going to do. So this is how we're going to get back on top. We sort of just went through the motions and let it all unfold, and it was a horrible feeling. I felt sick at the end of the game. I remember George Gregan standing up over a couple of the boys at the end, shouting out 4 more years, and that's George's wonderful, beautiful personality coming out by the Australian attitude, I think, at the time. And but they deserved it. They played outstanding footy. They were well coached by Eddie Jones at the time, and they took their lessons from earlier in the year, and they come back and give us a good smack on the nose. And then Robbie and John Mitchell were out. I think it was even before the end of the night that they got told that they were gone, and that's a really for that to happen straight away, for me, is a real knee-jerk reaction. And I think what happened after 2007, which was the worst All Black performance of the World Cup, being knocked out at the quarter-final stage, probably changed the way that we looked at World Cups going forward and preparing for World Cups by reinstating Morgan, allowing Graham Henry to keep his job, keep his assistants on, and that continuity. They were able to take the lessons, so they'd had the experience, had a fantastic management group in place, Brian Lahore, Gilbert Amoka sort of mentoring as well, and they got it right 2011, and then got better again in 2015. So I think there's something to be said for that continuity and giving coaches a chance to rectify or learn from their mistakes.
And out of all the World Cups, when I spoke to Steve Hansen, he said one of the most enthralling matches that he'd ever taken part in as a coach was when he was coach of Wales against the All Blacks in 2003. I think it was something like 53-37, the final score.
Yeah, I remember the game. I'd actually been injured for the first 3 games, and I think it might have been my first game back. And the intensity was just amazing, and the speed the Welsh were playing at, they were playing fun footy. It was actually a really enjoyable game to play. Shane Williams was on fire. I think that was when he really started to make a name for himself. I think he'd been playing around at halfback, and then he gets on the wing in this tournament, and he just lights it up, and nobody could touch him. He had to sort of have 3 guys around him because he was sidestepping people in the space of the phone box. Stephen Jones sort of really kicked on in that tournament and really put his hand up as one of the best 10s in the world at the time. Sonny Parker, Kiwi boy, he was playing some really good footy at the time as well. Colin Jarvis was in that team, and he was an inspiring leader for them, and it all sort of just seemed to click. And they played some real good rugby, had us under pump. Potentially we didn't expect that as well, so they got on top of us early, and lucky enough, we had enough quality. Probably wasn't through really dealing with pressure, as I alluded to before, because we come unstuck a couple of games later. But we had enough quality in our squad to get us through. So it was a great game. Remember it vividly.
Yeah, bringing it forward to 2007. I won't talk about the France game, but what I will talk about is the morning after. I remember being told by one of my uncles that after New Zealand got knocked out, that they'd put their kit out of the Hilton Hotel, if you remember this. And I was there, and all the New Zealand players put their kit out, and the fans were allowed to take it. And I remember seeing you with your top off, and I thought it was a streaker running through. But I don't know if you can remember that.
I've sort of tried to wipe that those couple of months from my memory. So thanks, you keep bringing it up all the time about 2007, the first performed All Black team ever at a Rugby World Cup.
Sorry,
not too many memories that I've kept in there, for obvious reasons. But yeah, well, thanks for bringing all those times up.
All right, we'll move away from it now. You get your own back beer now, because Sandwich. Go on.
Yeah, but potentially, it was always a big part of the All Black way is being able to take your knocks and keep that humility about you, And we had fans that travelled to see us, and they were devastated, like we were devastated. I remember after and I was in the stand. I didn't get to play the game, which made it even harder because I couldn't contribute. All my mates, some of my best mates were out on the field and they're going through it, we're under pressure. And myself and Doug Howlett were both experienced guys, were part of the All Black leadership group at the time, and we had to take one on the chin when we got told that we weren't selected, and we were sitting in the stand, and it was tough, and just feel the disappointment. Like, we're all disappointed. The guys around on the grass had given it everything they had to give. They just got beaten, out-passioned by a better team on that day. That was France's day, and you had to respect that, and you had to give them their credit because they were better. They earned that opportunity to go through to the next round. But I could see the hurt. Like, our coaches and our whole staff had worked so hard to get us through there. There'd been so much planning, probably over-planned. Potentially lost the ability just to stay in touch with what was right here and now and what was right in front of us. And that was probably the big learning for everybody in that team at the time. But it really hurt. It was tough. And I remember as a leadership group with our coaches, we talked about the importance of getting it right for our people, because the whole nation was feeling that way. And that comes out in all different ways. It comes out through sadness and tears, and some people just laugh it off. Some people don't deal with it. Some people get angry. And there was a mixture of all of those emotions going on. And you think it's important to acknowledge when you're a team under pressure or you've underperformed, respecting the bigger picture that's at place and the responsibility you have to yourself and your teammates and your nation.
And I think also people who aren't from New Zealand and were seeing it from maybe the media's point of view, that it was a complete disaster and they're going to be ridiculed when they come back to New Zealand. If you go on YouTube and you watch the documentary A Weight of a Nation that came out in 2011 after New Zealand finally won the World Cup, they go back to 2007, and when you come off the plane, there's a massive crowd there cheering you home. And did you expect that when you come back up from the plane, when you come back from Cardiff?
I think we're all a bit apprehensive around, what was waiting for us, because we'd witnessed and seen all the mixture of emotions I just talked about before. So you don't know whether it's going to be a happy crowd, an angry crowd, or so you turn up, and I was overwhelming, really. I think the people that you wanted to be there, the people that you needed to be there, they were there, and it was they were showing their support in the right way. And I think they felt it with us, So it was a pretty awesome feeling, and it made us proud to be New Zealanders, to come back to people that cared, and they could see the bigger picture and see that we were hurting probably more than anybody, because we're the ones that have pulled that work in and failed. So, as I say, though, your biggest learnings come from those failures, and I wasn't there over the next 4 years going to the next World Cup. But I was still closely linked with a lot of people that were, and I was just absolutely rapt that they could get it right. It was still a bit of a scratchy one up at Eden Park against the French. The French were never about to do it again to us. They got there, they had the resolve, had the resilience to get through and deal with some of those moments that we hadn't been able to deal with in the two World Cups beforehand.
Well, I feel like I brought up a lot of bad memories for you, but now you can get your own back. 2005 British Lions absolutely smashed us 3-0, especially in that second test. I haven't seen a performance like it from an individual from Dan Carter. That was pretty incredible. But you played in the first two tests. Firstly, what was it like to be part of a Lions tour?
Oh, it was awesome. I didn't realise at the time how big the Lions were. I remember watching the Lions as a kid and thinking, well, this is great, and my old man would make a big deal of it because it's the Lions. And it was not until 2005 that I got a real appreciation for the passion and the streets. Anywhere you went were just littered with red jerseys, and people were singing songs. And Kiwis aren't great fans. They're pretty quiet. They sit there and they're all rugby nerds, so they just sit there and watch the game. And you got pretty much 50,000 coaches in the stand coaching and critiquing the game. And one thing I love about the support of the UK is, they love the game, they enjoy the game, but they love the atmosphere as well. And they create a really good atmosphere. They feed off each other. The singing, like being in the Millennium Stadium and you listen to Bread of Heaven or singing the national anthem, it's pretty spine-tingling stuff. You're at Twickenham and God Save the Queen's going off. And same in Ireland. I remember my first test in Ireland and the Irish national anthem and just the noise. It's just a different level. So that type of support and the noise and the atmosphere it created, I think it taught New Zealand fans a lot. So the build up to the games was massive. The Lions had a fantastic team as well. England were in good form at the time. Ireland were getting better. Wales were showing signs of being a top tier team as well at the time. With might have been Ted was in charge there, was he? Sir Graham.
Mike Ruddock was in charge of Wales at that time.
But always been a strong nation, Wales, and so in the quality of that team, they just had an awesome team. Johnny Wilkinson, superstar, you had your Will Greenwoods, your Lawrence Delalios, your Martin Corries and Neil Backs, guys that have been so dominant for Leicester teams and those England teams that performed really well at the time. And you didn't always play against those guys a lot, so it was a bit of the unknown. These guys are performing really well overseas, and now they're all coming together as one. Brian O'Driscoll was on top of his game at the time. I think Stephen Jones actually pushed Johnny Wilkinson out to 12 for that first test. So just the calibre they had to choose from right across the park was outstanding. So a lot of anticipation going to that first game in Christchurch. Yes, I remember it was a terrible night in Christchurch. It was pouring down, it was freezing. I remember warming up and couldn't feel my hands at the time, and I think I only touched the ball 3 or 4 times in the game. It was pretty tough going, but it was a great build up, and we just clicked that series. We played some really good footy. I think the Lions probably underperformed with what they had, and that's always got to be a challenge when you're bringing the 4 teams together. So they probably didn't get it right, and we just got it right. And a big part of that was young Dan Carter really hitting the straps as a 10. He'd played a bit of 12 and 10 a couple of years prior, but he really put his hand up and said, look, I want to be a 10, and I think I'm going to be the best 10 in the world for another 10 years.
It was crazy because I think at that time Dan Carter was only 23 years of age. And that seems mind-boggling looking back at that game now. I remember, I think Sky Sports played the full match a few months back in sort of trying to get the preparation of the Lions feel and the buzz in the nation in preparation for this summer. And I watched the full game, and he just played like he'd been 10 all his life. He looked as if he'd had 100 caps. And I remember that second test vividly because Gareth Thomas scored a try in the first, I believe, 3 or 4 minutes, chipped over the top, scored under the posts. And then I think Johnny Wilkinson had a kick that hit the crossbar. Jason Robertson catches it near the line, and the Lions score there, and then it goes up to 15 or 17-3 at that point. Unfortunately, Paul O'Connell comes over the ruck and gives away a penalty. And then, obviously, the rest is history. Dan Carter scores 30-plus points. Have you seen a performance like that before or after?
Well, I think he's pulled a few out, to be fair. A few of those.
Hopefully against Wales.
Yeah, that was pretty close to the perfect game. I think it was Wales, might have been at the end of the same year.
Yeah, 2005. I remember November, he absolutely destroyed Wales.
Yeah. And he's just a guy, he grew up in that Crusader Canterbury system. He learned how to see the game. He was always a quality footy player. Strong, a really strong guy for not a big guy. He's probably 93, 94 kgs at his heaviest, but he actually played like he was 110, you know. He's just such a tough competitor. So the physical side of the game never worried him. So he could tackle like a flanker, he could run, he could fend, he could handle all the knocks. When he started to figure out the game, you start to see it's a little bit like the Matrix when, you know, Neo's in the Matrix and he sees all this computer, all the encrypted code.
Yeah.
2005 was like that for Dan, you know. He's seen it and he's the guy dodging the bullets and he's seen the game so clearly. And once he got there, he just had a confidence to call the game, back himself and just go and attack and just play what he saw. You know, you hear a lot of people saying, "I'll play what you see." You've still got to know what you see and you've still got to make really good decisions. And for him, that's where it all started to click. So it was fantastic to play alongside him for those years and learn a bit from him and hopefully pass a bit on to him as well.
Well, you went from playing against...
I just realised when we were talking about the Lions before and who was coaching Wales, Graham Henry was actually coaching us.
Yeah, I know.
It was a bit of a weird one. I was actually getting a little bit mixed up with all these guys that had gone over to coach Wales at the time, but to just realise he was our coach. So we've actually got to give him credit for what he did going into that series as a coach with Stephen Wayne.
Yeah, there's a conveyor belt of New Zealand coaches coming towards Wales. But yeah, you played against the Lions in 2005, and then you eventually, 2 years later, managed to play with some of the Lions at Leicester Tigers. I believe you were only 27 at the time when you made the move over to the UK. What was the thinking behind that? Because I believe did you have a bad knee injury at the time?
No, my body was good. I was actually at the peak of my physical powers, I suppose, in 2007. And we'd had a big conditioning period before the World Cup. And we weren't allowed to play, there was maybe 12 to 15 All Blacks that were selected not to play the first 7 rounds of the Super Rugby competition.
Yeah.
I was actually really resistant to that. And the reason for me, I needed to play. And I loved the game and I didn't want to not play. I felt like I needed to play, and there were a lot of guys in that boat. And some guys benefited from it well because guys that could just turn up and play well from day one. I needed a couple of good games to get into the swing of things, and I loved playing for the Crusaders. But anyway, through the conditioning period, we built our bodies. We were pretty much trained machines, at the time. So I was running PBs. So I was in great nick before I went over to the UK. The thing behind that was I'd already played from 99, had 9 seasons in New Zealand. And being a part of the All Black leadership group was such a privilege, but it was a massive responsibility as well. And it was a little bit, I don't know if drain's the right word, but I just felt like I needed a bit of a change. I was still young. So I thought if I go overseas, maybe go and have a different experience, challenge myself in different ways. I could always make a decision whether I come back to New Zealand and maybe had a crack at the World Cup again for 2011. If I was good enough to even make one of the Super Rugby sides, or make a career over in the UK. And I would have happily done all of those things if my body had held up.
Yeah.
If I had the opportunity to do that. So it was that was the reason, really. Just wanted to change. We had 2 kids at the time. Amy and I, my wife, got married in 2003. We had my first son, Felix, in 2004. And we had Zoe in 2007, at the start of 2007. So we thought while they were young as well, what a great time to go and travel and have that experience. So, I loved it. I loved my time at Leicester as a player and as a coach. But those 3 years, man, I had some good times. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from the coaches. I learned a lot from the organisation. I learned a lot from the players. And Leicester did things in a different way to the Crusaders, but they were successful.
Yeah.
So my mentality at the time was, man, this is different. This is different. And I'm thinking that some things need to change here. But I learned that I had to change because they were successful. Leicester was successful in its own way. And it was a good learning for me. But you can do things in a different way and have different formulas to success. So it was good learning. Once I got that through my head, I was pretty average, to be fair, in the first 3 or 4 months. Trying to adapt, trying to figure out the game. I'm used to touching the ball 30, 40 times a game as a playmaker. I think it was my first game against Toulouse in a Heineken Cup game. and Marcelo Lafreda asked me if I was ready to play, and I'd only been there for a week and a half. I watched the first game against, might have been Leinster. The first week I was there, the boys played Leinster. I didn't go to Dublin. We come back and played Toulouse at Welford Road. And we won 8-7. And I played 60 minutes outside Goody. And Goody became a good friend, during my time at Leicester. But he did enjoy kicking the ball a lot, Goody. And I'm seeing opportunities to run, but that was the way we did it, Get the ball down there and play territory, and then get down there and bash the shit out of anyone that got in your way. And we had the beast to do that. We had Cozza, we had Benny Kay, all those guys, just absolute machines. Julian White, I didn't really want to give it away in front of that guy.
George Shooter.
Shoots, just demoed anyone on their path, those guys. Castro was a young guy coming through at the time, and he'd sort of learnt the Leicester way with his Italian, Argentinian sort of spin on it. So we had a pretty dominant pack. So I remember going through this game. It's a freezing cold night, and touched the ball a couple of times. And I think I made about 17 kick chase tackles. I got beaten the crap out of. And then I got a dead leg after 60 minutes, and I walked off. I was thinking, what have I done to myself here? This is not the game I'm used to playing. And that was a real lesson in itself.
Yeah.
And it was sort of my mentality, to be fair, for the first few months around how do I find my way in this group in a different mentality and a different style of playing. Once I found that, and once I connected with the guys, and once I started to have a bit of pride in the jersey that I was wearing because of those connections, I absolutely loved the place. And we finished that season. We did pretty well. We managed to scrape through the semis and tipped somebody over in a semi-final. It might have been Gloucester. I think they finished first, and we went down to Gloucester and snuck through. I think Goody might have kicked a drop goal in that semi-final. We played Wasps, so we went to Twickenham. And by then I was in. I thought, this is what a great place. It's different, and I found my way, and I really enjoyed it, and I started to see more opportunities to learn from the UK style of play. So the next 2 years, I had 2 more years there, and loved my time, apart from the injury, which forced me to retire in the end. Had a great time, formed some great relationships, and became a better player, I think, and a better, more well-rounded sort of perspective on the game for it.
And one of the things I bet you didn't expect to be part of was a penalty shootout when you faced the Cardiff Blues in the European Cup semi-final. I was there as a youngster. It was one of the first times I actually been to the Millennium Stadium, and I just thought it was normal. I thought, they have these at the end of every game. But it was one of the first times it ever happened in European Cup rugby history.
I think, was it the only time that it's happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, and it was a real unfortunate way for Cardiff to go out. Our boys felt that as well. So it was a bit of a subdued celebration. Obviously, we were ecstatic that we'd won, going through that, because we're experiencing that for the first time ourselves, and somebody had to get through it, and we were pretty. But I thought when you looked around our team, once that initial emotion had hit, we could feel the pain for the Cardiff boys, and they played some great footy all year, and it was a shame that it happened like that. Especially when you've got guys kicking goals who don't kick goals. I think the rules have changed now. You can pick 3 or 5 goal kickers who are actually goal kickers, and they just keep rotating and they go through. So it should never be decided by a flanker who's never kicked a goal in his life. It's just I think they learnt the lesson there. So it was a tough one for the Cardiff boys. Fortunately for us, we were able to sneak through and play Leinster in the final a couple of weeks later up in Edinburgh. It was a funny feeling, and I'd been out for about 6 to 8 weeks beforehand with my back, so I was having all sorts of issues, and couldn't feel my feet at certain stages through my rehab. The numbness that's going through through my foot. So I was only supposed to play 20 minutes. So going at the 60-minute mark, it's my first game back, and I was absolutely gassed. And I was starting to get a few nerve issues through there. And then we go into extra time, so I've got to play another 20 minutes. And by the end of that, I couldn't actually feel my foot. So I was a bit concerned about taking the kick, because I just wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to feel the ball on the foot. So we had quite a few guys that practiced their goal kicking, fancied themselves as goal kickers. So they all put their hand up and stepped up first. I think Julian Dupuy whacked one over, and Sam Vesti might have whacked one over. Toby Flood was on our side at the time, but he'd had a ruptured Achilles, so he wasn't there. Scott Hamilton did a bit of goal kicking, so I think he knocked one over. And then Johnny Murphy was fancied himself as a goal kicker. I think he might have been our fourth kicker.
Yeah.
And Geordie, I think Geordie might have knocked one over first, actually, Geordie Murphy.
Yeah.
And then Johnny stepped up, and fantastic character, really good footy player. Johnny, he's a good friend of mine. A bit of a deep thinker, so probably was overthinking things during that and the build-up. And he was fifth, probably better to nearly get these guys up first, I suppose. And he'd obviously overthought it, and he sliced his kick, which put a little bit of pressure on. I think one of the Cardiff boys.
Tom James missed it.
Tom James missed his kick, and then I was up next. And I was feeling like, and I'd kicked a lot of goals in my early days. Hadn't kicked for about 3 or 4 years, because I hadn't need to when you're playing with Ben Blair and Dan Carter and Andrew Mertens and Leon McDonald's and all those guys. So I'm going to be 5th or 6th down the list. There's not much point in carrying on. So I had to kick the goal for a while. Foot's feeling a little bit dusty. And I remember top of my run, and then just everything kicks in, you relax, and I managed to strike the ball okay, it came off the foot okay, and I went through the middle. But it was a pretty nerve-wracking feeling. So if you're a guy that hasn't kicked the goal ever before, and you're at the top of your run, I can't imagine what poor old Martin Williams is singing, and what a fantastic bloke he is,
Yeah.
He just didn't deserve that. It was a cruel way.
And it's sad, really, because we over in Wales, Martin Williams is seen as a legend, 100 caps. Everybody knows him as Nugget, and it's almost like every time there's an anniversary of that Leicester Cardiff Blues game, the game gets shown again, because it was just such a novelty. But you talk about flankers. Jordan Crane kicked a superb kick to win the game.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a superb kick. I think it might have been a spiral off the inside of his ankle. But it did the job. And then his celebration, I'm not sure whether he had turned himself into a Native American at the time, but I'm not sure what the celebration was all about. But he was a great character, Jordan Crane, and a very skillful guy. So, he was lucky enough to get it over, and we went through.
Yeah. Well, as we said, you went on to coach the Leicester Tigers after stints with the Crusaders, I believe. And when I announced on Facebook and on other social media platforms that you were coming on the show, I had a massive influx of Leicester Tigers supporters messaging me. And real message was, how gutted they were that you left, and how devastated they were that you had to go, and obviously O'Connor took over in your place. Were you just as devastated at leaving that role?
Yeah, it was. It took me a while to get over, to be fair. And the reason for that is I poured everything into it. I gave everything I could to Leicester, and my connection with the community was a big focus. I think at Welford Road, we had playing there, they just made it. They made my experience as a player. I could just see how much it meant to them. And these are a lot of working class people who allocate a lot of that income from the year to buy a season ticket, and they go down there and support the team, and they just are so passionate about the side. We had people travelling to away games. They travel everywhere, and I had some of these guys became my friends because they were passionate, like I was passionate about making the club a better place. So I felt really connected to the community and our fans because I could see how much it meant to them, and everything I tried to do was to help make a better place for our players, really help trying to create a learning environment for our players, with my spin, understanding all the good things about the Tigers, but also trying to help our players mature and grow into good men and really start to own the direction that the club was going as well, alongside me. So, I was gutted when that happened. I thought we were starting to make some really good strides. It wasn't easy during the time, not because we had bad people. We really missed the opportunity to get real clarity and alignment when I first got there. And when you don't have that, it's hard to stay connected to where you're going and how you're going to get there if you don't have it from the start. And that was the biggest learning for me through my own inexperience and naivety as a head coach, and just dealing with some key people. So it was a real learning for me, and it was probably a big part of why things got to where they got to. Really firm believer in sticking true to yourself. So it was. I felt that I did that through my tenure at Leicester. And at the end of the day, you don't have to agree with everyone. Sometimes you just see things differently. When you finally get back to that point around what you want and where you want to go and how you're going to get there, if you're not aligned with key people, then you have to make a split. So this was the day, I got told the day after we just won a Anglo-Welsh championship. It was the first bit of silverware the club had won for quite a few years. We've been back into European Cup quarterfinals for the first time in a while. So I felt like we were making some good strides. We also had some shockers during that period. We got beaten well by Glasgow at home in a European Cup match, which was probably the low point. So we had some highs, but we had some lows. But we're really trying to figure out as a group around taking all the good stuff and the marvellous foundation that had been created by people before us. Talk about stand on the shoulders of giants earlier on, and there's some giants in that place, some wonderful people. But learning how to evolve with that, because if you don't evolve and you don't look at ways to continue being successful, then you get stuck. And that can be, and we've seen it over the years with some of the best sporting teams ever. You stop moving forward, you stop seeing the opportunities to be better, you stop challenging yourself because let's just do it how we've always done it. Let's just do it how we've always done it. And I felt we were stuck there a little bit. My mentality was always to keep changing. I come from a real learning environment which was bred into me at the Crusaders, really supportive and not being afraid to try things and fail and go through a bit of crap to get through the other side. I felt like we were just getting there and things ended. So for that, I was gutted, hurt me, and it's just take those things on the chin and move on. And at the end of the day, rugby's a part of our life. It's a big part of my life, but it's just a part of life, and there's more important things. So it was a big lesson though.
Yeah, it must have been. And we've talked a lot about your past in rugby. Let's talk a bit more about your future now. What does the future hold for yourself, especially in coaching now?
Yeah, so mate, what I've decided is just going to have a bit more of a low-key year this year. I'm going to do, when I say low-key, still got some really important things that I want to do to more around my own development and to continue coaching, mentoring and helping people out. So I'm doing some work down at John McGlashan College, which is where my son goes. And that's more around the pastoral care, pastoral support, leadership development and mentoring the young men down there. Something I'm really passionate about, and I just get to do it at a younger age where these guys are a bit more malleable. We don't have as many habits or maybe fixed ideas in place. So I'm hoping that I can help them come through their school years and be really set to attack the big wide world, really. So that's my focus down there. I'm going to coach down at the school as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. Young guys, once again, using rugby as a vehicle to help them become good men and get the best out of themselves. So, doing a little bit of consultancy work here for a few clubs. I'm going to do some work with the Iran's team, Murray Mixted and his crew. And it's all on my schedule. And the good thing about that is I get to spend more time at home. As I said earlier on, I've got 4 kids. And it's probably what I needed, to be fair. Just a bit of a quieter year in terms of the professional stuff. but I'm really looking forward to it. I'm just as excited as what I will be going into a new Super Rugby season.
Yeah.
And, we're really lucky to have the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, good luck with all that. Is it okay if we finish with a quick fire round, Aaron?
Let's go for it.
Brilliant. Right.
It really gets me out now.
Firstly, who's the best player you played with?
Well, I'm gonna pick two teams.
Yeah.
And I'm going to describe both. Andrew Murdens had a massive influence on my early career because I competed with him, and I learned so much from him. But then I played outside him, and how I started to see the game in my early years was just a flow and effect from being around that guy. The smartest rugby brain I've ever come across.
Yeah.
An outstanding man. And just a quick story on me. So it's not really quick fire. My first test, we played against Ireland. I marked Kevin Maggs. Kevin Maggs come into the shed, asked me if I wanted to swap jerseys. And there's no way I was going to give away my first test jersey. And Mertz had witnessed this on the side. Without me knowing, Mertz went chased Kevin Maggs out into the corridor, swapped his jersey, his number 10 jersey, for Kevin Maggs' number 12 jersey. Brings Kevin Maggs' number 12 jersey back into me. So I've got my own test jersey, and I've got the guy that I marked Kevin Maggs' test jersey at home downstairs. So had a real good connection with Mertz. He was a great teacher and a guy I consider a good friend. So, and he made me look good. So he actually he helped me become an All Black. Made me look good in those early years. And then obviously Dan Carter, with some of the things he was doing, took Mertz's mantle really. And so I was able to witness both of it, changing of the guard when Dan came over and took over, and he was just a complete footy player for me. Yeah. And I watched the growth. I witnessed it right next to him, and I could see it. And then when he got to 2005, I was like, wow, mate, you're away.
So this is the next one. This might be even harder. Who's the best player you've come up against?
I always found it hard against the big physical guys because I was always giving away weight. So for me, the technical, understand the game was my game. But when I was kept playing guys like Tana Umanga, Ma'anonu, Sterling Mortlock, your David Barrys, guys like that who were big physical men, that was their game. That was their number wood. So if they're going to the driving range, they hit with their one wood the whole time. I was probably hitting more with like a rescue wood or a rescue iron, in terms of power and strength and all those things. So I always found those tough. I had to really steel myself for those challenges. I thought Tana, where he got to, and then I never played Ma in his later years, but Ma got there as well. Once they developed the real triple threat, and they were tough guys to mark because Tana could beat you any way he wanted. He could run over you, he could step you, and then run through you. Yeah. He could put someone else in the space and around you, and then he developed a short kicking game as well. So a lot of respect for him. Overseas, obviously, Brian O'Driscoll, guy that I played against a few times. What a class footy player. And for a smaller guy, really strong as well. Outstanding, really quick, outside break, smart footy player, great skills. There's a lot of respect for Drico as a footy player as well.
This may be an easier one. Best friend in rugby?
Oh, mate, probably anybody I played with at the Crusaders as a youngster. Family, they're just family for me. Played with my brother, which was pretty cool. He's probably my best friend. Got to play alongside him. A lot of guys that I come through the academy with. Jordan Murphy, good friend of mine. Played with him at the Tigers and obviously coached with him over there as well. He got me into a lot of trouble actually when I was over there. So, but he was a good friend. So the reason he was a good friend was he actually kept me out probably later than what I should have been a couple of nights. I thought, I don't know if the wife would be too happy with me coming home at whatever hour in the morning it was. So I'd go home and often wouldn't take the key out. So I'd had to wake my wife up to get inside. And so I'd say to Geordie, you're coming with me. Because Geordie he's real charismatic and he's just got a great way with people. And he's the sort of guy that everyone loves because he's just a fantastic human being. And I love the guy too. Love him a lot. Anyway, he's on the front doorstep with me. We knock on the doorbell and I hear thump, 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 thump. And you know that thump's an angry thump. And I was walking down the stairs and open the door. She's opening the door and she's about to let rip, and then Geordie's, how are you? So And I used to call her Mrs. Mage. How are you, Mrs. Mage? And then she, oh, hey, Geordie, how's it going? Well, yeah, you guys had a good night? And he'd just smooth it all over, and he'd stay the night. He'd put him in the spare room or on the couch, and she couldn't be angry at me because I just brought one of the friendliest guys home, and he used to smooth it all. So that's a good friend, when he'll take half of the hit for you when you're getting home a little bit late at
night. Your favourite coach?
Wayne Smith. Detail, the work that he put into really growing the detail within my game. Legend. Steve Hansen, probably all round. Thought he got people, got the team, he got the feel of a team. Robbie Dean's culture, what he did through the Crusaders. I was also fortunate enough to work with Heineken Meyer when he came up to Leicester. It's only a short stint for him there, but you could really see what he was about. Very different, very passionate, wore his heart on his sleeve. But he was just a fantastic man, so learned a lot from him as well.
Yeah. Best match you've been involved in?
Best match I've been involved in? Yeah, probably that Lions tour. 2005, second test. Everything was clicked. We played some amazing footy against quality opposition, best opposition, and our game clicked. And it was pretty awesome at the Cape Town. I think probably 70% of the crowd was red in Lions. Yes, it was a home game, but it felt like we were playing offshore. And the Lions fans were awesome. They were great people. They were just so friendly. They took it for what it was. They lost, but they still had a great time, and it was good. Probably the other one was my third test. I played in Argentina in Buenos Aires. It was at the River Plate Stadium. There was about 80,000 people there. The capacity anyway, and we run out and there's flares going off and there's fruit flying around the place. There's smoke, and so man, these guys are absolutely crazy, and they nearly beat us. Scott Robertson scored a try in the last minute in injury time. It was about 6 minutes into injury time. I don't know if the ref was worried about being in charge of the first All Black team to lose to Argentina at the time. So I had a couple of those on my first tour, but that was an amazing experience, and just the elation when we got through. It was a bit of a relief. But the atmosphere was probably one of the best and most unique that I've ever played in.
Yeah. Worst drinker you've played with?
There's heaps of those. Played a lot of rugby with a guy called Caleb Ralph.
Yeah, the winger.
And, he was a winger for the Crusaders, played for the All Blacks. And Ralph would go hard early, and then he'd fall asleep. So I don't know if you remember the Weekend at Bernie's film.
No, I don't. Sorry.
There's a film called Weekend at Bernie's. It's about this guy who's actually dead. Yeah. And his mates carry him around. They're trying to cover it up. So they carry him around and they take him to the beach and they dress him up and they put a hat and sunglasses on. He's sitting there like this, but he's actually dead. So that was Ralphie's nickname. Anytime we'd have a couple of beers, because he'd be Bernie after 3 or 4 hours and he crashed out when everyone else having a good time. Unfortunately for him, he would wake up when everyone else is going to bed and he'd carry on. So
there's always one.
Good man, fantastic man. But he was our Bernie.
Biggest troublemaker on and off the field?
Probably Ali Williams.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, just confident guy, awesome character. Like he's real lovable guy, but it's he'd go early. But good personality, and that spark's important, eh? It'd be pretty boring if you had a whole bunch of rugby nerds in your team. So,
you talked about confidence. You talked about confidence. I remember Ali Williams putting in a cross kick for somebody I think it was about 2006, something like that, in the Tri Nations against Australia.
Yeah, unbelievably talented lock. Probably one of the most skillful locks, athletic, skillful locks that has ever played the game. He could do all those things. He could throw a 30-metre long ball to a winger. Score. Could put a kick in. Take the ball on his fingertips, one-handed, and deliver it perfectly to the 9. He's a very skillful player and really good personality for the All Blacks, because he was challenging and he, because it didn't always filter. It was this is what I think, and that would put people on the spot, which is a good thing. I think, and he was a good leader in that way.
I remember him and Chris Jack were unbelievable in the second row. Finally, Aaron, if you weren't a rugby player, what would have been your dream job?
My dream job? Good question. I think sport. I love sport. I've always been involved in sport. Went to teachers college. Really enough, I wanted to be a teacher, but I enjoy working with people. I enjoy being in a group environment, an environment where you can help people become better, an environment where people help you become better. So teaching, study some sports psychology, which is an interest. Obviously, being a coach as well, that part of the game's absolutely critical. Cricket was probably my second sport. So nearly flagged rugby in my mid-teens to pursue cricket. Probably wouldn't have been good enough, to be fair. I sort of thought I was pretty good at the time, but watching those guys now, they're unbelievable, the way they go about their business. But I'm pretty fortunate that I was able to walk the path that I walked.
Yeah, exactly. And it's been a pleasure talking to you as well about your career. It's been a pleasure watching your career. You know, it's a bit strange over the last few months. I've been doing these interviews, and a lot of guys that I've been talking to are players that I grew up watching, and a pleasure watching you, and it's been a pleasure talking to you as well, Aaron. I wish you all the best for the future with the coaching, and hopefully you can have a nice year off now with the family, and we'll talk again soon in the future.
Yeah, thanks very much, Nathan, and thanks for everyone that's tuned in. Just want to say from here, hope you're all keeping safe and well, and got your focus on the things that you can control. So you guys keep safe. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully see you again sometime.